The night my dad stood in my kitchen and said, "She's your sister. You owe her," something inside me cracked. He wasn't asking me to help my divorced sister. He was telling me to give up my life so she wouldn't have to deal with hers. Stick with me. I'm Maren Holt. I'm 32, and everything I have I earned the hard way. I worked 2 jobs for years. I said no to trips, no to nights out, no to anything that cost extra. While other people relaxed, I saved. That's how I bought my small house on my own. No help. No backup. Just me. A week before my dad showed up, my younger sister Lila finalized her divorce from Grant Keene. It was messy, loud, and full of drama. The story I kept hearing was that Lila was fragile and heartbroken. Everyone said she couldn't be alone right now. Everyone acted like she might fall apart at any second. I felt bad for her. Of course I did. She's my sister. But feeling bad is different from giving up your home. That night, my dad, Russell Holt, didn't call first. He just showed up. He stood in my kitchen like he owned it and told me Lila would be moving in. Not for a few weeks. Not until she found her feet. Indefinitely. I didn't even know what to say. I asked a simple question. For how long? That's when his face changed. He called me selfish. Cold. Said I had no heart. He said family helps family, and that I should be ashamed for even hesitating. Behind him stood Lila. Quiet. Arms crossed. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say sorry. She didn't even look uncomfortable. She just stared at the floor like this was already decided. I felt trapped. If I said no, I would be the villain. The bad sister. The cruel daughter. I could already hear the family whispers. So I said yes. The word came out of my mouth before my brain caught up. As soon as I agreed, my stomach dropped. I knew I had just crossed a line I wouldn't be able to uncross. As they left that night, my house felt different. Smaller. Heavier. I stood alone in my kitchen, staring at the walls I worked so hard to earn, with one clear thought in my mind. This was going to end badly. Lila moved in 3 days later with more bags than I thought one person could own. Suitcases, plastic bins, shopping bags, even boxes I didn't recognize. She smiled like this was a vacation, not someone else's home. At first, I told myself it was temporary. I helped her carry things inside. I showed her the guest room. I even cleared a closet so she'd have space. She thanked me once, quickly, like it was expected. By the end of the week, the guest room no longer looked like a guest room. Clothes spilled onto the floor. Shoes lined the hallway. Her makeup covered the bathroom counter. Then her things started appearing in the living room. A blanket on the couch. Her laptop on the coffee table. Her charger plugged in where my lamp used to be. Soon the kitchen was hers too. She rearranged my cabinets because this made more sense. She bought food I didn't eat and complained when I cooked my usual meals. If I made something simple, she sighed and said, "I'm still recovering, you know." Like my dinner choices were hurting her. She didn't look for a job. Not even a little. Every day was too stressful, or not the right time. Bills came in, and she never offered to help. When I mentioned utilities, she laughed and said, "Relax, I'm family." My dad started calling daily. Sometimes twice a day. He asked how Lila was sleeping. If she was eating. If she seemed sad. He never asked how I was doing. If I sounded tired, he told me to be patient. One night, Lila turned the thermostat up without asking. When I changed it back, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're really strict for someone living alone." Another time, she complained about the brand of coffee I bought. "Gran always bought better stuff," she said, like I was failing some test. None of it was loud or obvious. It was small comments. Little actions. But they added up fast. I stopped feeling relaxed in my own house. I waited for her to finish using the bathroom. I cleaned up messes I didn't make. I felt tense walking into my kitchen. One evening, I realized something painful. I was planning my days around her moods. Around her comfort. This was my house. I paid for it. I worked for it. But somehow I felt like a guest. And Lila acted like she'd always belonged there. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful. My favorite scarf wasn't where I left it. My good mug went missing. Small things, easy to brush off. I told myself not to overthink it. Then my routine started changing without my choice. I came home one evening and heard laughter. Lila had friends over. People I didn't know. Music playing. Shoes by the door. She didn't text. She didn't ask. She just acted like the house was hers to use. I stood there awkwardly while strangers sat on my couch, eating snacks from my pantry. Lila waved and said, "Hope that's okay," like it was already too late to say no. Soon, I noticed she was using my things. My clothes showed up in her laundry pile. When I asked, she said, "Oh, I just borrowed it. You weren't wearing it." One morning, my car wasn't in the driveway. She had taken it to run errands and didn't mention it until hours later. The worst part was the bathroom. I had always kept one bathroom private. It was the only space that felt fully mine. One night, I walked in and saw her stuff everywhere. Towels used. Products opened. My quiet space was gone. I finally spoke up. I told her calmly that I needed her to ask before using my things. I said I was feeling uncomfortable. Her face changed instantly. She started crying. Real tears. Loud sobs. She said I was making her feel unwelcome. That she had already lost her marriage and now felt like a burden. Somehow, my simple request turned into her pain. Later that night, my dad called. His voice was sharp. He said I needed to be careful with Lila. That I was stressing her out. He reminded me she was fragile and told me to be more understanding. Not once did he ask what happened. Not once did he listen to my side. I hung up and sat in silence. My chest felt tight. I wanted to scream. I wanted to argue. But I didn't. Instead, I swallowed my anger. I smiled when I had to. I kept the peace. But something inside me shifted. I stopped trusting what I was being told. I started noticing patterns. What she took. What she said. Who always defended her. I didn't say much after that. I didn't fight. I watched. And I remembered everything. I didn't mean to overhear the call. I was walking past the hallway when I heard my dad's voice coming from Lila's room. The door was slightly open. I slowed down without thinking. Russell was on speaker. "I told you she'd take care of it," he said. "Marin always does." My heart started pounding. I stood still, barely breathing. Lila laughed softly. Not sad. Not broken. She sounded relaxed. I know. She felt bad. That's all it took. They kept talking like I wasn't even in the house. Like I didn't exist. That's when I heard things that didn't match the story I was given. The divorce wasn't sudden. It wasn't some shocking betrayal. Lila admitted she'd been planning to leave for months. She talked about money fights and choices she made that I had never heard about. This wasn't a woman who had been left helpless. This was someone who had made decisions and landed exactly where she wanted. Then my dad said the sentence that changed everything. "Don't worry about rent or bills," he told her. "Your sister will handle everything until you're back on your feet." Handle everything. My stomach dropped. This wasn't an emergency move-in. This wasn't about healing. This was planned. They had decided my role without asking me. They had counted on my guilt before I ever opened my door. I walked away quietly and sat on my bed, staring at the wall. For weeks, I had been carrying guilt, telling myself I needed to be kinder, more patient, more understanding. In one moment, that guilt disappeared. What replaced it wasn't rage. It was clarity. I finally saw the pattern. I wasn't being generous. I was being managed. Used. My kindness wasn't appreciated. It was expected. After that, I stopped confronting Lila. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to be heard. I started listening. I watched how she spoke to me when she thought I wasn't paying attention. I noticed how my dad only called when she complained. I paid attention to what was said and what was carefully avoided. I kept my tone calm. I stayed polite. But inside, something had changed. I was no longer confused. I was awake. And once you see the truth clearly, you don't rush. You wait. The day Lila crossed the line didn't start with a fight. It started with an envelope on my kitchen counter. I picked it up, confused. It was from my home insurance company. I hadn't changed anything. I hadn't called them. Still, the letter said my policy was under review because of new information. My hands started shaking. When I asked Lila about it, she didn't even look worried. She casually told me she had called them. She said she was thinking about subletting a room to help with money. She hadn't asked me. She hadn't warned me. She just assumed it was fine. That wasn't fine. At all. My house insurance was in my name. Any change could raise my rates or even cancel the policy. Worse, renting without permission could cause legal problems. This wasn't just rude. It was dangerous. I told her that calmly. I explained what could happen. She shrugged. "You'll fix it," she said. "You always do." That sentence hit harder than anything else. I called my dad, hoping for once he would hear me. I explained the risk. I told him she had made a serious decision without my consent. He didn't pause. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he snapped at me. He said I was dramatic, that I cared more about paperwork than my own sister. He said I had control issues and liked to hold money over people. Those words hurt more than I expected. Not because they were true, but because they showed how little he saw me. Lila stood there, arms crossed, silent again, letting him attack me, letting me take the blame for her mistake. I felt something deep in my chest give way. This wasn't just about bills or insurance anymore. This was about respect, about being treated like a person, not a tool. They didn't see my house as my home. They saw it as a resource, something to use, something I was expected to manage quietly while everyone else made decisions. I looked around my kitchen, the same space where I had agreed to let her move in, the same counter where I paid my bills and planned my life. In that moment, I realized how far this had gone. I wasn't just being used. I was being erased. After that day, I stopped reacting. On the outside, everything looked normal. I was calm, polite, agreeable. If Lila talked, I listened. If my dad called, I answered without arguing. Inside, I was doing something very different. I started writing things down. Dates, times, what was said and who said it. I saved texts. I kept emails. I noted when Lila used my car or invited people over. I didn't tell her. I didn't warn her. I just documented everything quietly. Lila relaxed. She thought the problem was over. She joked again. She complained again. She made plans like I wasn't even part of the conversation. At night, when the house was quiet, I searched for the truth. I reached out to someone who knew Grant, her ex-husband. Just a simple message. I didn't accuse. I just asked. What I learned filled in the missing pieces. Lila hadn't been pushed out of that marriage. She had left after running up debt without telling him. There were unpaid cards, late notices, choices she didn't want to admit. The divorce wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Suddenly, everything made sense. The rush to move in. The refusal to work. The comfort with spending my money like it was nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't throw the truth in her face. I kept listening. A few days later, I met with a coworker I trusted. She had gone through something similar with family and warned me years ago to protect myself. I told her everything. She didn't judge. She didn't rush me. She gave me one piece of advice I won't forget. Protect your name and your house first. I also spoke to a lawyer. Just a short consultation. Enough to understand my rights. Enough to know what could and couldn't be done without my consent. That meeting changed how I saw things. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't powerless. I had options. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. I didn't want loud revenge. I didn't want drama or screaming matches. I wanted control back. I wanted my life back. So I waited. I smiled when I had to. I stayed quiet when it mattered. Because real revenge doesn't rush. It prepares. Lila's final move came wrapped in confidence. She was smiling when she told me like she already knew the answer. She said she needed to borrow my car for a few days. Not hours. Days. She claimed she had a short trip planned and didn't see the problem since I worked from home. She didn't wait for my response. She just grabbed the keys from the counter. Old me would have argued. I would have said no. I would have panicked. This time I said nothing. I nodded and told her to drive safe. Her smile grew wider. To her, my silence meant permission. It meant I was still the same person who cleaned up after her and stayed quiet. What she didn't know was that this was exactly what I needed. I documented everything. The date. The time. Her message saying she would be gone a few days. I checked the mileage. I saved the texts where she talked about staying with friends. Then I waited. Those days felt long. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in months. I felt lighter. Clearer. I didn't rush to fix anything. I didn't warn my dad. I let the situation unfold on its own. When she finally came back, she acted proud. She talked about her trip like it was proof she deserved more freedom. She never once asked if it was okay. That was the moment the balance shifted. Now there was no doubt. No misunderstanding. No emotional excuse that could explain it away. It was clear. She took what wasn't hers and expected no consequences. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my tone. I thanked her for bringing the car back and went on with my day. Inside, I felt calm. The power had moved, and she didn't feel it yet. She was still relaxed, still careless, still confident that I would protect her from everything. She thought she was winning. But the truth was, she had just handed me the final piece I needed. And once that happens, the game is already over. I finally said no one quiet morning. Lila wanted to rearrange my furniture again. This time, I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I looked her in the eye and said, "No. This stops now." She blinked, confused, like I'd broken some rule. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I'm just making it nicer." I took a deep breath. "You're using my home like it's yours. You've taken my car, my things, made calls without asking me, and now you want to change my living room? I've kept quiet too long. I'm done." Her face changed. Anger flashed quickly, then a smirk, then a sneer. "Oh, so now you're the boss," she laughed. "I've been patient, and you're the ungrateful one." I didn't argue. I stayed calm. I had evidence ready, texts, photos, dates, everything. I laid it all out simply. "Here's everything you've done without permission. This isn't about being kind. This is about respect. You've ignored it. I won't anymore." She rolled her eyes, tried to cry, then shouted, "You're just selfish." Dad said. I stopped her. I called my dad into the living room. Russell came in, arms crossed, still looking like he expected me to apologize. I explained everything again, calmly, clearly. I showed the evidence. I didn't accuse. I just let the facts speak. For the first time, the stories they told fell apart. Lila sputtered, tried to twist words, tried to guilt me. "I'm fragile. You're mean. He said you'd help." I stayed quiet. I let her talk. I let my dad listen. As she yelled, I saw who she really was. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't fragile. She was selfish. She had relied on me for months because it was convenient. My dad's face changed. I saw the first crack. He realized that no amount of guilt or charm could get me to obey this time. He tried to speak, tried to remind me about family, tried to protect her. But I had already decided. I stayed firm. Calm. Polite. But unmovable. Lila's mask fell completely. The confident, smiling sister disappeared. The fragile victim was gone. She was just her real self, entitled, reckless, unapologetic. And Russell understood it too late. I wasn't the obedient daughter anymore. I wasn't going to cover for her. I wasn't going to give in. I had finally said no. And in that moment, the power shifted. The next few days were quiet, but tense. I didn't need to speak much. The consequences were already starting to show. The insurance company sent a letter confirming that Lila's plans had violated my policy. They needed clarification from the policyholder, me. The bank sent notices about the car she had taken. Nothing catastrophic yet, but everything pointed to one simple truth. Her actions had real consequences, and she couldn't just rely on me anymore. Lila tried to act casual, but the panic was visible. She called friends, asked if she could stay with them. Most said no. A few asked why she hadn't been honest. Her options were shrinking. She had assumed my house would always be a safety net, but the safety net was gone. Then my dad stepped in. First, he tried guilt. "She's your sister," he said. "You can't just abandon her when she needs you." I shook my head. Calm. Firm. She needs responsibility, not enabling. When that didn't work, he got angry. He called, texted, and even came by my house to lecture me. "You're making this worse. You're cruel." I didn't argue. I didn't apologize. I kept my voice steady. I refused to be drawn in. He tried bargaining next. "I'll handle it. I'll take care of her. Just let her stay." I refused again. No compromise this time. My boundaries were clear, and I wasn't moving. Lila's confidence collapsed. She stopped smiling. She stopped joking. She couldn't charm her way out of the mess she created. She was panicking, calling anyone she could think of for help, realizing my house wasn't her playground anymore. My dad's narrative, telling everyone I was selfish, that I had to care for her, finally crumbled. I didn't fight it openly, but I didn't play along either. I watched quietly as both of them struggled to regain control. Lila's independence was forced upon her, not given. My dad's influence over me was gone. He couldn't guilt me, bribe me, or bully me anymore. The family story that had been told for years, that I would always sacrifice myself for her, was shattered. And through it all, I stayed calm. I stayed steady. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I simply let the truth play out and watched them face the reality they had ignored for so long. Finally, for the first time in months, I felt relief. They were panicking. I wasn't. I had my life, my house, and my peace. And I wasn't giving it up for anyone. By the time Lila realized she couldn't rely on me anymore, things had shifted completely. She had to face life on her own, and for the first time, She wasn't smiling confidently. No more borrowed money, no more borrowed things, no more safety net. She had to figure out her own bills, her own schedule, her own space. Independence was no longer optional. My dad tried one last time. He called, came by, even begged. He reminded me of family, of love, of duty. But the words didn't land. The control he thought he had over me was gone. Months of manipulation, guilt-tripping, and lies couldn't bend me back into the obedient daughter I used to be. I had seen the truth, and I had acted. I walked through my home differently after that. My kitchen didn't feel tense anymore. My living room wasn't crowded with her things. My bedroom was mine. My space, my rules. I reclaimed not just the physical home I had worked for, but the emotional space I had lost. It felt quiet, almost strange, but it was mine. Seeing Lila struggle with responsibility was not satisfying in a mean way. It was just reality. She had to live with her choices, as did my dad. I didn't need revenge to feel complete. I needed boundaries, and now they were clear. I realized something important during it all. Love without respect is just control. You can tell someone you care, but if you ignore their boundaries, if you manipulate them, it isn't love. It's power. And I refused to give my life, my home, or my happiness to anyone who didn't respect me. I didn't apologize for my decisions. I didn't soften the edges. I didn't try to make it easier for them to accept. I simply chose myself. I chose my peace, my home, my work, my life. I chose to live without being controlled by guilt, by family expectations, or by entitlement. It was bittersweet. There was sadness for the family I wished we could have had, for the sister I hoped she might have been. But there was also relief, clarity, and strength. I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you human. And in that moment, as I sat in my quiet, restored home, I smiled softly. Not out of triumph, not out of spite, but because finally, for the first time in months, I was free. I was truly, unapologetically free. If you're struggling with family pressure or boundaries, remember, saying no doesn't make you selfish. It protects your well-being. Keep clear records, understand your legal rights, and set limits calmly. Learning to enforce boundaries teaches respect and independence, helping you reclaim your life without guilt or unnecessary conflict.